to start with some quick introductions so that everybody knows who's who in the room. And I'm asking you for three things: your name, your connection to downtown Laredo, and thirdly, the city that you've enjoyed visiting the most. Could be anywhere in the world. I'll start. My name is Regina Portillo. I'm not a landowner of the downtown, but my husband and I work in the downtown, and we love it, we enjoy it, and we want it to be better. And thirdly, my most favorite city that I visited is a small town in Spain called Cadaqués, where I was able to enjoy the beach and walk all over the city pretty easily. So I'll start with Tim here, and then we'll go down. So three things, Tim.
I'm Tim Jackson. I have, what are the things?
Your name, your connection to downtown Laredo, and your favorite city.
Regina, can I ask Tim to stand up because I'm having a hard time because the air up here.
Oh yes, of course.
My name's Tim Jackson. Hi. I have property on Zaragoza and Flores. It's been there since the dawn of man in my family. And I don't have a favorite city. I don't.
You don't visit anywhere?
I don't.
Not even in pictures?
Then it's Laredo.
It's Laredo.
Alright, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Edgar Campos. I'm here representing the City of Laredo Community Development Department, and we are the staff liaisons with that represent the TIRZ of the city. And
The city you've enjoyed visiting.
Downtown San Antonio, I love it.
Why do you love it?
Historic, the buildings, and I just love the view and the river walking on.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Elsa Hinojosa, Programs Administrator for Community Development Department of the City. Here on behalf of Ms. Tina Martinez, our Director. I attend also sometimes the TIRZ meetings on behalf of Ms. Tina. And the city that I'm visiting is Portland. I've been there once for a training, but I really like their, especially the downtown. And I would tell, I told my director, Tina, I wish we could do so much more in Laredo. There's so much we can do to revitalize, our downtown area compared to the cities that I've been to. There's so much we can do, but unfortunately we don't. I guess we need to get together to entice and make our downtown area more.
What's one thing that you liked about downtown Portland?
The downtown, their buildings, their streets, the way they've renovated their buildings, the historic. I know we could maybe implement and do so much more here in Laredo.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Margarita Araiza. I'm with the Webb County Heritage Foundation. Excuse me. We have 3 venues in downtown Laredo, our office on Flores Street, and our 2 museums right here on Zaragoza Street. And gosh, I don't have a favorite city either, but I really enjoy Tepoztlan, Mexico. Very cosmic. It's been visited by UFOs regularly, so.
So is Laredo.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Larry Friedman. I'm a real estate broker developer. I have an interest in quite a bit of properties in the downtown area, on Grant Street, San Agustin, Iturbide, Zaragoza, and I represent them all. We have an interest in. We have quite a bit of property owners up and down Convent Street. And I live in the downtown. I love downtown. And all I want is this city to take off and blossom like every other city where we can live, walk, play, work in our downtown area. That's what we're trying to do. My favorite city is Jerusalem. That's my favorite city. And there's a lot of history that we have here in Laredo that we all can capitalize on, especially now. And if there's something that I can do to help the city, I'd love to do it. And Julian, we have a lot of empty buildings around you. And just like in Jerusalem, we're not taxed. Anyway, that's my favorite city.
My name is J.J. Haynes. We have a couple of properties in downtown Laredo. And my favorite city is Artesia Wells, Texas.
Where is it?
Artesia Wells.
1200 block Zaragoza, 200 block of Convent, and it's been empty for years. What used to be an asset is now for probably somebody in
And what are you trying to
the walkability shops and stuff.
Thank you so much. Same? Okay. Your regular attendance.
Yes.
My name is Rick Martin. I own property on downtown Laredo. This is my favorite city, Jerusalem.
And what do you like? What do you enjoy?
History. Beauty.
Mary Dahl, I'm here representing the Housing Authority and have property downtown that we're looking at investing downtown also. And I've worked in downtown, so I have an interest in that.
And your favorite city?
Chicago.
Okay. And why, what do you like about Chicago?
Well, my son was there and due to the walkability and pizza.
Cubs. My White Sox.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jessica Martinez. I'm with the Laredo Housing Authority as well. One of my favorite cities for me would be Austin, Texas. It's just the downtown area, it's just the walkability, the distance. I see the buildings with the mixing, with the commercial on the bottom, housing at the top. So I think it's something really interesting.
Thank you. Mr. Ceballos, we're just sharing our name, your connection to the downtown, and the city you've been for visiting the most.
So I'm a member of the TIRZ board. I'm also a member of the Housing Authority board. And I love this downtown. I used to office in the St. Peter's neighborhood for about 6 years. And I also worked on the conference center project that worked in Baskin. So we worked on the conference center. I think Boston, but here knows that. I personally, I love Washington, D.C. I really do. Any opportunity to go there. And it's walkability is the high point. In fact, of course, there's things to see that are monumental, but if you had to drive there, it probably would be the same. You can pretty much get to things quickly, and unlike some other metros, it's very green. There's that mix of greenery with urbanism. So yeah, DC, and I was also going to say Baltimore in that area. I don't know why, but Baltimore, the downtown is beautiful. People have been there. So.
Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Alexander, and I have an interest with my brother-in-law there on Convent and Zaragoza. I'm also on the TIRZ board as a member, and I've been to over 40 meetings since the TIRZ was created, and of course I have an interest in the history and the revitalization of downtown. So I'm pretty passionate about it, but I'm starting to lose that. And my favorite city to visit is, I don't have like a favorite city, but the cities that I enjoy visiting are the ones that are walkable: Boston, San Antonio, San Miguel de Allende, Vegas. I just was in West Texas. Some of those cities are very small but still walkable, and so that's fun that you don't have to be traveling in a car to get to where you want to enjoy some entertainment or history.
Thank you, Carol. Julian?
My name is Julian Rotnowski. I'm representing my company, Economic Development Advisory Committee that I sit on, and also Economic Development Corporation, which I'm a board member. I'm also a property owner in the downtown. My favorite city is probably the city I just visited, which is Barcelona, Spain, and it's kind of the same thing. It's always the walkability, the history, the fact that all your shops and restaurants and bars are right below your apartment. So living upstairs and everything you like to do downstairs.
Viviana?
Wait, I forgot to say that I have a profession. I'm a real estate appraiser, and I'm for hire.
My name is Viviana Frank. I'm a principal at Maple City. Our offices are downtown. We We're planners, architects, economic developers. My connection with downtown is generational. My favorite city is, I'm a lover of cities. I love all cities that are historic and walkable, and I get very sad when I enter a city that does not recognize its resources that they have in their downtown area, and I get very happy when they do. And I love walking and Googling them, and I spend a lot of time, I take tours Googling cities for hours on Google tours, I call them. So cities provide access to a happy life.
Did I miss anyone else? All right. So how are we doing with the PowerPoint, guys? Brenda?
It's not doing it, so.
Henry, how do you want to move forward?
Let's continue.
Let's continue? Okay. So I'm gonna present our next speaker. Our next speaker is not only the chair of the TIRZ board, but he is a community leader that Laredo is lucky to have. He's the Vice President of International and Public Affairs at IBC. He holds 25 years experience and expertise in international trade and economic development. He emphasizes the need for innovation, real-world and workable solutions that apply to long-term planning. He worked and lived in Mexico and Japan. He has held senior leadership positions at the City of San Antonio, the State of Texas, and the North American Development Bank. He serves on numerous boards, including the Laredo Chamber of Commerce and the Webb County Heritage Foundation, and is also on the advisory board for the Center of International Business Studies at Texas A&M University. His work has been recognized internationally, and he holds an MBA from Texas A&M International University and a BBA from St. Mary's University. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Henry Savingham.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you for reading that exactly as I wrote it for you. Morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I hope we get this up soon. I know it's a little bit of a distraction, so I'm competing with technical assistance here, and I don't like that because it's I don't want to distract from the message we're sending, but I'm going to try to keep your attention over the technical part of this here. So a good question was asked this morning when we came in about the organization and the committee, and that's the TIRZ, the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. And it was not exactly said this way, but it was kind of another tax. And so I think I need to begin by saying that the name of the program is a misnomer, because it's a tracking of a tax, but it isn't a new tax. And I'm going to explain that to you as the presentation goes on, because I think you need this kind of background to understand it. It looks like the first slide will come up very soon, so I'm going to wait for this. Yeah, there we are.
Where can we get the lights?
Yeah, good idea.
And so when we were discussing about favorite cities, I will say every time someone named a city, that became my favorite city. I visited and been to the cities you've all mentioned, and I found them all very nice. I will say that one city always sticks to my mind, and it's not even a city. It's an unincorporated area called Guerneville, California. That's in the Sonoma Valley by the Russian River. And the reason it won me over was that a few years ago when I went there for a small vacation, it was maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday evening, and we ended up at, of course, where you end up on a Tuesday or Wednesday evening at a bar. And it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and suddenly there are not many people at the bar, maybe about 6 or 7 people, and I can see that the bartender's gotten a call, and he hangs up and he says, okay, we're closing and going over to X, and X is the bar two streets down. And I said, why are we doing that? And he says, well, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays we call each other, and whoever has the most clients at that moment, we bring over the clients from the other bar to this bar. I thought that was the most interesting concept they had on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, closing the bar with the least clients and going to the bar that had the most clients. Sorry about that. So here we have, let's go to the next slide. And the next slide shows a little bit about the TIRZ district, or the TIRZ zone. And it's roughly a rectangle. The northern border is Scott Street, San Darío on the east, the river south. On the west, it's the railroad tracks, and then you can see it kind of jumps over and it encompasses the Laredo College campus. The TIRZ was formally established in 2017, and it's set to run for 30 years. Its organizational meeting was in November of 2017, and our board members are myself as chair, Carol Alexander, Jose Castillo, Jose Ceballos, Patricia Goldberg, and Orlando Navarro. You'll recognize some of these names. Some of these people are private sector individuals who were appointed by either the mayor or Councilwoman Cigarroa, and other members are set members that are on the board by virtue of the charter of the organization, and they're city officials. Jose Castillo and Orlando Navarro are Director of Planning and Director of Finance, and there is one vacant position that the city manager has yet to appoint that'll be put there as well. Just to give you an idea, in Texas there are about 180 TIRZs throughout Texas. And they operate in every city, large and small. So name the small city and it's there. And of course they're in the largest cities. Now, how does it work? So let's be clear first of all, it's not an additional tax. So what it does is, what the TIRZ did when it was established was it set 2016 as a baseline for this district, or this zone. And what that means is it froze the tax base in 2016, and the program works in this fashion. Every time the tax increases, meaning more tax money comes in, and I'm gonna make up a number and say it froze at $100,000. So the city was collecting $100,000 in 2016 from this zone. So that in 2017, when the taxes are assessed and the city collects the taxes, everything it collected, the $100,000, it continues to contribute to the coffers of the city of Laredo. It continues to go towards fire, towards police, parks, etc., etc., etc. It supports the infrastructure that it supported before and continues to support it. But the difference with the tax increment zone is that in 2017, if the zone collected $100,000 and an extra $1,000, that extra $1,000 goes into a pot that is kept aside for reinvestment in this zone for improvements. So what it's collected then is $1,000, and that $1,000 can be used for improvements. Now, how does it get better? It gets better by improving the district. So the challenge with a TIRZ is you don't improve the zone, you don't improve the amount of money that comes into the kitty that helps fund projects in the downtown area. So it's an incentive for the city, the TIRZ board, and the downtown area to improve the district so that taxes continue to come in fact, go up to a degree to bring money in so that for 30 years, the city has made a deal with us. And the deal the city has made is anything you collect above $100,000, that imaginary $100,000, everything you collect above that for the next 30 years, you may use it in downtown for reinvestment purposes. That's a significant promise, but it requires work on the side of the downtown TIRZ, city staff that's assigned to and working with us on the TIRZ, and our board members. Why was it created? Well, it was created about the time another major project, let's go to the next slide, please. It was created at the time a major project came about. And that is the shops at the outlet shops at the mall around here. And this was a significant investment for the city. And the city wanted to help protect that investment. It acknowledged that there's other investment going on in the downtown area, but that was a significant investment. It said, how do we protect this investment? And part of protecting that investment was saying, let's set up a TIRZ that helps create connectivity, meaning, and walkability, meaning that we help join the outlet to the downtown so that we stop this idea that when people come downtown, they come to the downtown area, they park at the Laredo Center for the Arts, they do what they're gonna do at the Laredo Center for the Arts, they get back in their car and they leave, or the shops, or the museum. The idea here is you're now encouraged because of the atmosphere and the walkability to go from one point to another. You don't have to do the whole walking, but walk the zone so that because there's some attractiveness, something of interest for you to move from point A to point B. And that was the impetus of the setting up of the TIRZ by the City Council in its original format. Of course, it's going to affect and protect more than just the shops as an investment, and I'm going to describe a little bit more about this. The goal is to contribute for the transformation of the downtown. It's to make downtown vibrant. It make a place that's a nice place to work, and yes, we want to make it a place to live. So there is a housing component to this that we need to take into consideration, but it's all going to take planning. Let's go to the next slide. I talked about more investment than just the shops. And so you can see if we go down the line from the shops to the cathedral, to the Plaza Theater, to La Posada, to the bridges, outlets. Okay, that was not the shops, I'm sorry. That was the Border Heritage Museum. I'm sorry, Margarita. The Border Heritage Museum, the outlets, Siete Banderas, the Center for the Arts. All of these are major investments in the downtown area right now that one could argue. We can argue both ways. Everybody can have a debate. They're either connected, and everybody can say, yeah, they're connected, they're walkable. But most people will tell you they're not walkable because if I'm at one point, I don't know how to get to the next point if I'm not familiar with downtown, and nothing encourages me to walk to the next point. And yet they're very close to each other. But we need to connect them. And the TIRZ, this is what we're going to try to do with TIRZ funding, is connect the dots so that private sector investment and public sector and charitable sector investment in these areas pay off. They have a meaning to us. They work, and they're not just isolated developments. You know, I'm sure we're all familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's A Tipping Point. And the tipping point, the premise of the tipping point is that circumstances occur, and then suddenly the chapter turns to a new phase or a new point. But what causes it to change to that next phase and that new point? And he calls that the tipping point. And the trouble is that no one really knows what the tipping point is. And I view downtown as a layering process. I want to acknowledge all the work and all the investment that you've put into downtown years after years of keeping it going still, and still having faith in the downtown area, not leaving the downtown area. And then those places that have actually recently invested money in the downtown area. That's another layer. And then you have the community that wants to live in the downtown area and is looking to live in the downtown area. That's another layer. And then we have the businesses that are starting to grow on Iturbide Street. That's another layer. And I see the TIRZ as yet another layer. Which is going to be the tipping point? We can't answer that question. If we knew that answer, again, we'd all be rich. But we're working to create that momentum so that it tips and the successes begin to fall into place. And that's part of what the TIRZ is hoping to do. Next slide. So, what did we do? You saw how large the zone was. The zone was very large. And now I'm going to talk to you about real numbers. How much money is in the TIRZ kitty? How much money has it collected in its pocket? And the amount of money that it's collected is approximately just shy of $1 million. So since 2017, the collection of the TIRZ has been just shy of $1 million, meaning it's collecting between $250,000 and $300,000. Let me give these people a chance to move around.
I'm good. I'm good.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Please.
I've been sitting in my truck downstairs listening to it while I was on stand for a while.
Okay, so the idea here is that if we're only getting between $250,000 and $300,000 a year into the pocket of the TIRZ, what can you do with that? Well, let me give you an idea. You're business people, you know what you can do with it, okay? But I'll give you an idea about in terms of redevelopment. In order to redevelop one block from here to here, and this is just a very general rule of thumb, it's not an exact number, you can quote me, but you can't take it to the bank, okay? It's approximately $500,000, a streetscape project that includes a little bit of drainage, a little bit of street, a little bit of sidewalk, a little bit of trees, a little bit of rewiring, is $500,000. So what does that mean? It means that we have to wait 2 years for money to come in order to do streetscape for one block. Well, it's going to be 30 years and we'll do 15 blocks in the TIRZ. So you understand the challenge. Now, it doesn't have to be that way all the time, because if we're improving the district and the district gets better, then the increase in tax value will bring more money into the pocket of the TIRZ, and it'll be able to reinvest more money into it.
How can we qualify for some of this $1 trillion of infrastructure, funds to be invested here in our downtown?
First of all, this is not. There's not $1 trillion.
No, well, I mean, they're going to vote on it this week, but
right. This is not that. This is on the TIRZ.
No, I know it's on the TIRZ. I mean, I'm part of the TIRZ. I signed the deal to make sure our bank would be a part of it. But so we would not qualify for any of that money.
Well, the money that's coming in from the federal government.
Right.
It's not something we're discussing right now because we don't have control over that money.
Okay, but I mean.
I don't work with the city.
Okay. But hopefully we're planning for it. I mean, we're trying to.
Yes, we're working. The city officials and city directors are part of the TIRZ board, and I'm sure they're taking that into account.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're maximizing it and at least making everything that we can possibly do to try to qualify for some of those dollars.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So going back to this, you have those monies that are coming in, and our idea here is to use what we have to start linking what we do have in the immediate downtown area. The outlet is here, and the most immediate plan the city council had was for us to move towards the plaza and the historic district. So the board, as the money was coming in, we couldn't do anything for the first 2-3 years actually. We were waiting the money come in. We were planning and walking the downtown area, and we honed in on these 3 streets here. Zaragoza, Okay, sorry. We can only have one conversation in this meeting at a time, please.
Sorry.
Zaragoza Street, Iturbide Street, and San Agustin Street. And that's what the board honed in on, working with the city, working with the board, working with members who did come to us, who were asking for us, giving us input, and we honed in on those areas because we want to connect the significant investment that's gone on in this area. And this chart shows you the amount of money that's gone into the bridge projects, La Posada, the Border Heritage, San Agustin, Siete Banderas, 8th Street, Plaza Theater, just to name some of the investment. This is not an exhaustive list, but we want to join these projects to make them significant. So let's go to the next chart. This is just very brief to talk to you about one of the things that you're going to see me mention over and over and over again when I talk about walkability. I'm going to talk about sidewalks, I'm going to talk about lighting, and I'm going to talk about trees. Why? Because these are the three most significant deals that we found when we were visiting various projects in various cities that made an area walkable, going from point A to point B. One of the things that trees will help is trees is going to help the hot zone. You see that pinkish area there? That's downtown Laredo. You see that little green corner at the top? That's Jarvis Plaza. Simply by having trees the way Jarvis Plaza has, brings down the climate and the temperature in the downtown area. And if you're interested in the climate and the effects of the climate, this is great. But I'm talking about walkability, because it helps people walk from point A to point B when it's not so hot, because you put in trees and you plant them in the key areas. Next slide, please. The board, the staff, the team traveled to various cities in Texas to look and see what they were doing in their downtown areas for renovation. And again, I want you to see some commonalities here. You see lighting, you see trees, and you see walkability. People can walk from point A to point B. Next slide. And so we use that as inspiration for our downtown area. Some of these pictures are of downtown Laredo, a couple are not. But let me tell you, sometimes when I saw some of these pictures, and like this picture in particular, I thought we were looking at a picture from Spain, but this is downtown Laredo. It's just a hidden gem on a side street that if you didn't know, you're not familiar with the downtown area, you don't know that's Laredo. But just by lighting the tower, the steeple here at San Agustin, look how that's changed the feel for that area there. And so our plan is to do more string lighting, trees, light the trees, so that we make the area walkable not only in the daytime but at night. Next slide. So I'm going to start off with Zaragoza, and I'm going to describe this part here, and then I'm going to talk about here. Then we're going to go to San Agustin, and I'm going to talk about this zone here, and then Iturbide. So let's go to the next slide. So this is what Zaragoza looks like, coming from the outlets, going towards the San Agustin Plaza. Obviously, in the daytime you can see it very clearly, but if I'm standing at that intersection, I may not know, especially if I'm not familiar with Laredo, that there was shopping in that direction. The idea is to add trees to the side of Zaragoza that are lit for evening lighting, as well as, you don't see them, but there's string lighting towards the mall area over here, so that when someone is standing at that intersection, it says, walk down that way. There's something happening over there. And that takes care, and that's something that we're visioning for this zone here. Go to the next slide so that you can see it in a larger format. You know, just trees, just a walkable sidewalk, and you've walked that sidewalk. I walked it. I've walked it 20 times because we've done this zone over and over and over and over again. If you can't walk it, you're not going to be encouraged to go down that zone. And so that's why we're trying to create walkable. Next slide. Now, you're from Laredo, but you're not familiar with downtown because either you don't work downtown, you don't visit downtown very often. And so what happens is that you know that you get off the highway and go down Santa Ursula, but what do you do after that? And you've seen the cars are going slowly. Do I turn on Lincoln? Do I turn on Farragut? No, it's Iturbide, which is the one-way, which is not the one-way. And so what we're going to start working on also is what's called monument signage. Monument signage is at an intersection, a significant intersection, and in this case Santa Ursula and San Agustin, that says to the person who's driving the vehicle, this is a gate to enter an area. I should be paying attention to that gate because there's going to be something at that turn. And so here's a rendering of what would happen if we put up those monuments. Notice that, and these are just drawings, these are concepts, but notice that they harken to the tower, the steeple at the back, so there's some connectivity. Notice the trees that are lit, so it's more walkable. This is what it looks like now. This is what we see it could be with trees and monument signage. Next slide. In a larger format. Next slide. San Agustin, okay? So this is what San Agustin looks like now. So it has the tree component and it has some lighting component, but the lighting is in desperate need of repair. And the one thing it's not is walkable. If you've tried to walk it, the only walkable part is if you walk in the middle of the street, but you don't try using the sidewalks because you'll trip. So the idea is to create a walkable zone from the plaza to the Laredo Center of the Arts by laying the foundation for a straight walk, reinforce, add a few trees, reinforce the lighting concept, and go to the next slide, so that it looks more like that over the 2-block area. Next slide. Iturbide Street. You're familiar with Iturbide? I grew up in Laredo. I left in '85. I came back 30 years later, and I'm walking the downtown area. And to be very honest, the only area that I would walk down where you could walk down north to south, and then suddenly you hit a street and you turned and you looked east to west that looked attractive was Iturbide. And frankly, it was the trees. The trees make you want to turn right or left if you're walking, let's say, down Convent and you hit Iturbide. The trees are still there, and we need to reinforce that deal. We need to add lighting to the trees, and so we're going to do this. But here, what you see is the side of the street right now. That's the opposite side of the street. We need to reinforce the sidewalk for walkability purposes. We've added monument signage. You saw that on Zaragoza, it was the little mini towers. Here, it's a larger street. This is not set in stone. We haven't decided on this. This is a concept drawing, but a monument sign of some sort will be there that says to people, this is Iturbide Street. If you're coming for the evening, turn right here. That kind of deal. And then you see the trees and the string lighting. Go to the next one so you can see a larger version of it. Next slide. So we go down Iturbide, and you can see Iturbide has trees, but they're not lit. They're in need of maintenance, and we like to add lights to the trees. But there's another opportunity for more lighting there. Let's go to the next slide. This building here is perfect because this building historically has lights at the top of it that are not functioning at this point. So we hope to approach the owner and talk about reconnecting those lights so that they become lights and an attractive point on that street and that intersection. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so what is the timeline? So I told you we have a little less than $1 million. We're using the $1 million to leverage a bond to get $2.5 million. We've mapped out what I just described to you, put pen to paper, and come up with a budget of approximately $2.5 million. So we're using the $1 million that's already there to leverage the bond for the $2.5 million to do those improvements. It's to do sidewalks, it's to do trees, it's to do the lighting. I wish we could take lines underground. I wish we could do the drainage, but the truth of the matter is that the TIRZ program has to deliver streetscape projects that makes investment in the downtown area attractive, walkability attractive, and that's the first phase of this. It's not the last phase. There's going to be a phase 2, there's going to be a phase 3, and your input is going to be important there. We've had approximately 40 plus meetings since the inception of this. We meet every Tuesday, every second Tuesday of the month, without exception. Maybe there's a holiday, but almost without exception. And we meet either at 2:30 or at 5:30. And why do we alternate? Because we've been told by some people it's easier for me to come after work. Please move the meeting to the afternoon, so we've moved it to 5:30. And then some meeting, every other time it's at 2:30, every other time it's at 5:30. Your input, your comments are valuable. You're seeing the first phase. It's not the end. We need input from you for more. I'm going to do my homework and get an answer for you because your question is a very important question. I just didn't come prepared to answer that question.
No worries. I mean, this is beautiful stuff, and I love to see the wonderful work you all are doing. If I can ask you another question right now relative to the bond that you just talked about. What kind of bond is that?
It's a municipal bond. It's a bond. It's a part of the bond program that the city recently let out. But because we had money in the TIRZ, we asked them to increase their bond program by an additional $2.5 million to include this.
That's awesome. I would ask before we fully commit to that, unless we already have, that we look to the North American Development Bank and see if there's any program that we can apply to there. Because some of this stuff may, work within the framework of what NADBank was done, and we have a lot of great friends, that used to be from Moreno that used to head that stuff, and
You're in luck. You're in luck. You missed the introduction, my introduction. I used to work for the NADBank for 12 years. I was the director of administration, and yes.
When Victor Miramontes was there or after?
I was after Victor Miramontes,
Right.
But he was one of the people that brought me in.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so NADBank is an excellent resource, especially when we're talking because they concentrate on environmentally related projects. So if we can emphasize the environmental portion of any of this project, the NADBank has either technical assistance or funding, may have technical assistance or funding for it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then the last little bit I'll add is, and I love the lights, and I wish in downtown we could do the lights across the streets. But as we know that, a lot of our downtown businesses have heavy trucks, they go down there. So where we can put lights, and not obstruct or create maybe some traffic problems, unfortunately, let's just be mindful of those items.
And that's a very good point. As a matter of fact, one of the team members we brought in, so about a year ago, we let out a contract to get help with the design, taking the concept and the idea of the board, moving it to design phase so that we can go to bid phase, so we can go to construction phase, and we're working with Able City in that. And let me tell you, every time I come up with a dream and it's too much of a dream, Able City is very clear in explaining to me what you just finished saying. That's too low, that's not practical, that may not work. You need to consider trying X, or why not try Y? So they're mindful of that.
Awesome. And then one last thing, and I love that I know it's just a design word, they're highlighting Iturbide Street. Most walkable cities, and I think it's great, when you come to some of these major intersections, they have a pole there at the corner, and it's got, hey, shopping that way, and it's got, deal going this way, and it's got, so you can stand in the corner and look at all sides of that,
So if you'll go back, that's a very good point. So let me add to that before I turn over the floor to the facilitator again, Regina. And if you'll go backwards, I want you to go to the chart. No, I'm sorry, go forward. Yeah, it's the very, very last slide now that I'm thinking about it. this one. So that's a very good point. And this is to show you the value of having a professional firm like Able City that works in the Valley, in San Antonio, and other parts of Texas, in addition to Laredo, is they do talk about wayfinding signage. And so you see this purple dot here shows some areas where we need to consider wayfinding signage, monument signage, entrance to mall, nodes of connectivity. They're taking all of this into account. As we come up with ideas, they help make an idea into a practical concept. So I know you have more questions, and we welcome more questions, but I'm going to ask Regina to take over at this point.
Can we get the lights? Thank you, Henry. So we're going to move on to the discussion and questions portion of the meeting. But I'd first like to set some norms for the group so that we can have a productive conversation with the limited time that we have available. Lunch will be coming in soon, and you're welcome to go and grab it. But in terms of norms, I would like each of you to consider, if you haven't been heard, please make sure that you're heard, and also give others an equal opportunity to give input so that we hear everybody's voice in the room. And secondly, please refrain from interrupting. If you have a question that comes to you right in the moment, please jot it down and ask it a little bit later, but please no interruption so that we make sure to hear everybody. But really, we want to open it up to you now. We want your feedback on what you just saw. Do these public improvements help you? Do they not help you? Why do they? Why don't they? What are some of the things that are coming to your mind right now? So, anyone want to go first? Any reactions? Yes, go ahead.
Just for curiosity, with all these improvements, trees, lighting, extended sidewalks, who's going to maintain them? Who's going to maintain the lights? Who's going to maintain the walkways? Who's going to maintain? Who maintains it all? The tourist comes in, they put it in, it looks nice, the picture looks nice. Who maintains it?
That is a great question, and one that the city of Laredo and the council member of the district is already looking at, because you're right, the TIRZ does not maintain the public improvements. It's not part of their scope, but there is a plan for that. The city of Laredo is already looking at the next phases of that and looking at how other cities maintain these types of improvements. So it's in the works. Please stay tuned, and it's part of the reason why it's important to continue to participate and be engaged. But we have your information, and we're happy to invite you to the next conversations, especially with the council member.
Got one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Henry mentioned that in the planning, they're not thinking about doing the drainage yet. Is that what I heard?
Can I have your name for the record, sir?
Jake Mellon?
So that's correct, and if I'll go very quick. So there may be a drainage project planned by the city for the area, and we're asking a utility project. So we ask the city, let us know which projects they're working on, so that when we do this, they won't come in right afterwards and do a project. So we're coordinating, and we found 2 blocks where they have utility work planned. So we're going to join that to our project so that it's one project and not 2 projects.
That would make sense, because what we saw on Zaragoza Street, they invested millions of dollars in the beautiful outlets, and look at the drainage that's on the street. They redid the streets, but there's always filth on the street, and the city hasn't done anything in the past 6 years.
One of the other questions that you brought up, it was probably a week or 2 ago, as far as ADA, all we're looking at, we have to be compliant within all our stores and any of our properties, it's ADA. Well, here, as far as the redevelopment of the streets and putting in the trees and what have you, we have all the sidewalks that should have been in compliance with the city, and they've never done that. Our properties from Grant to Torpida, that whole area, you can't have it's not wheelchair accessible, the sidewalks or anything. So is this something that the monies from the TIRZ, where it's going to come from as far as the redevelopment of the sidewalks, or should it come from another company here on the side?
city.
Rihanna?
The city, of course.
Well, that is what the bond is
Right.
gonna help do, and the city, because did the bond, that's what's allowing us to do that. So yes, the answer is the city.
Right.
Working with the TIRZ. The TIRZ is not a separate, the TIRZ is part of the city. That's why they can work together.
Right.
So, yes, the answer to the question is yes, and the answer to the question also when it comes to ADA, it's an atrocity there. And the idea is to make it just, I guess, if some of you have been to downtowns where there really are no curbs, it's all just really connected. That's the plan for that street, so that we can take care of all the,
I'm just saying, you have different elevations, like our building that we have here on Zaragoza. We have Mr. Verdial over here in front of his property. He has like, I think, 2-3 steps just to get into your building because of the elevation on Zaragoza. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very, very nice.
You want to make Zaragoza flat?
no, not Zaragoza. He was talking about Grant y Iturbide, and I'm assuming you're
And
talking
now
about
we've
San
jumped-
Agustin.
Now we've jumped over from let's say from San Agustin, from Grant to Iturbide. That's where we're at, and also on Zaragoza Street. Basically where Mr. Gabriel is at, and Mr. Malik, where he's going. Yeah. I mean, you have poles and what have you, so I guess all that will be new. It'll be very
Well,
interesting.
there'll be, you know, when the survey gets done and we understand exactly all the points and everything, that'll be when the civil engineer, and we're gonna talk to them and say, okay, what can we do to make, either it's, there's steps now, but you can have a ramp that separates, the sidewalk is getting wider. There's all sorts of possibilities, but we do live in a very historic downtown where these things didn't matter at one point.
Right. Well, no, it definitely matters. I mean, all our streets, as far as the directions of our streets, I mean, they were all changed by an engineer named Paul Garza. He changed all the streets to one-way streets when they were two ways, only because of the truck traffic that we had back then. Now we have no truck traffic in the downtown area, and our streets, like Zaragoza, it should have been a two-way street. It should have been from Santa Maria all the way on up to basically whether it was Flores or even San Agustin at one time. But it didn't happen. But here, I think that if you guys are going to be developing that street, I think that it'll be just a very narrow street now. It'll be a very narrow street. It's never going to be two ways. It's going to be one way. So you guys have a lot to work on there. I think it'd be absolutely beautiful, especially getting to
one of the pictures. I think it was on. I wasn't under review. I think it was the sidewalks was extended.
Right.
And it was all flat.
Right.
And it was only one car.
One car, exactly.
And it was a nice picture. I forgot it was. Zaragoza. Thank you. It was as far as I said earlier. But it was Zaragoza.
It was right there in the corner.
Well, that still
of-
allows two
Yeah, but
areas.
if according to the picture, if you would,
Sure,
you're gonna
sure.
extend that sidewalk and level it and make it wider and make it ADA compatible, you'd have to take away at least one.
Yeah, sure.
And it would look nice.
Sure, there's
space.
space.
To begin with, but
There's space.
I have a question. So does this take, I'm glad they're bringing this up, does this take into any account any possible changes in the direction of traffic in order to be more efficient? Has there been any discussion with the city regarding that?
I mean, I think that will be part of the studies that come up because, like we mentioned, these are concepts. This is just conceptual design. But once they have to take a look at the poles, the wiring, and if they really do an in-depth survey, that's when we know what changes are even possible. But of course, like Henry mentioned, the goal is to connect these existing investments, and that means walkability, safety, addressing the urban heat with trees. So it's all those components. That's really the goal here. So whatever the survey tells us, then we'll know what's possible in terms of traffic, and that's why it works that the TIRZ is working with city staff, with our city planner to look at those things, and so they'll work hand in hand with the city.
I know through our community development department, with the guidance of Ms. Martinez, we did a downtown improvements along Iturbide from Santa Maria to Santa Isabel and some blocks of Lincoln and Grant. We did a couple of sidewalks and the AD ramps and corners as well. Also depending with council guidance, depending what sidewalks they want. Like if it's an existing sidewalk, we usually don't do one across. But I know Ms. Martinez has been trying to address this issue for downtown improvements as well. To beautify the downtown area, also depending on qualifying through our CDBG, which is low income areas. But I know hopefully the person who's here, she can try to address through community development grant funds more streets. But I know we just finished that project 2 months ago.
Yeah,
addressing
definitely.
that ADA.
So there are those funds that are available, and I know that the City of Laredo Planning Department is doing a sidewalk study to look at the entire area, and so I think that there are different players here that and different ways of tapping into funds. So
And another issue, I know we're also trying to address homeless. I think that's an issue we have here in our downtown area, homeless individuals, and I know through our department we've been trying to get more help with the funding to help out with this issue, and I know that affects, for this type of projects, having more homeless people, and I know through our department we've been trying to address along with other entities to address this issue. Yeah.
which we have here, Housing Authority has been a great leader on that. Anything you guys want to add?
Just one more question, I'm sorry. I missed the first 10 minutes of the meeting. The funding, if I understand correctly, is it coming from the property taxes that are collected? A part of that is coming from that?
Yes.
For the TIRZ funding?
So, very briefly, in 2016, the taxes collected for the zone were frozen, meaning that everything that comes in at that level, and I'm gonna say $100,000 coming in, just say something, they continue to go into the city for fire, for police, for public works, for parks, etc. The burden of the TIRZ is to increase the value of the downtown area so that the following year you collect not $100,000, but you collect $100,000 plus $1,000 of improvement. That $1,000 is allowed to be saved by the TIRZ for reinvestment purposes. And so then the more you improve, the more comes into the kitty. If you don't do any improvement, it stays pretty abysmal, which is why no improvements have been made. And right now, and that's my phone, I'm sorry. That's why for the last 2 or 3 years, only 250 to 300,000 have been coming in to the kitty. But as things get better, the improvement will go up.
On that, why is the city only relying on that zone to collect the money? Why is there no funding from the remainder of the city?
That's the advantage of a TIRZ. And that's why the TIRZ program, and as I mentioned, over 180 of them exist in the state of Texas. They're created for two types of zones generally get TIRZs. What they consider a blighted area or area in need of help because there's not enough money coming into that zone tax-wise. So they're trapping the money that's coming in over a certain amount and allowing that zone to redirect it for itself. Or else that $1,000 that next year, that $1,000 extra would get dispersed to all the city. It would be, so here the zone gets to keep that amount, and that's what the program is. Now, why doesn't the rest of the city pitch into this zone to make it better? But that's what council districts are all competing for. So council districts compete, as you know, we go through the budget process and see it. council people want a tennis court in their area, they want a pool in their area, a library in their area. So that all is competing for city funding. But one way to redirect a little bit of that funding is through a TIRZ program. And that's the answer.
Because there are only a few number of buildings downtown, so there's a lot of pressure on the downtown investors or the building owners. I'm just thinking if there was a little bit of help from the remainder of the city.
Again, politically, I'm trying to be as diplomatically but as direct as possible. Politically, you have to explain to another district why they're giving up money for another district when they have citizens that pay taxes also who want the money as well.
On that note, I know there's some federal funding that's being asked for, so how come there's no state funding that anybody's applying for? I mean, it's part of the state, and it's the frontera, you get.
The TIRZ program is a state program. The state doesn't have a lot of, I used to work for the state as well. I know it's gonna sound like I work for everybody. I worked for the state for a couple of years. The state has a number of economic development plans. Most of them, by the way, help fund rural programs. Urban programs are pretty well funded, but the urban community said, hey, what about us? And one of the answers to urban development and programs like this was the TIRZ program, and that's some of the state's answer to that.
Quick question. Yes. I understand the survey, and I understand what's putting aside for a project, and we've heard this year after year after year, presentation after presentation on what could be, but never comes around. And I understand where his question's coming from. The investment's coming from downtown itself. Because if there wasn't an investment in downtown, we would not see anything. Money that is allocated through the district, if you say, it is per district and also the city-wide thing. As a former council member, money was allocated for water, for sewer and all this as a whole. But that hasn't happened, that's not happening. So if we're participating and trying to do it, and I thank everybody that's done that, but where is the city gonna meet us halfway and say, okay, you know what, you almost like this, let's invest in infrastructure, let's invest in the street, let's invest in sewer and all that. We do is invest in ourselves because we can't wait for the city to come in and help, because by the time they come in, we're not gonna have a downtown. So a plan has to be not only what the plan, and I appreciate the work that they're doing, but what's the 3-year plan? What's the 5-year plan? Where this $1 million that's already put aside to $2.5 million, where's phase 2 of it? That should already be talking about phase 2, because phase 1, your concept, and I love your concept, trees, just make sure that their roots that are going down and not up, because we do all this work and then our sidewalks are all messed up. They have to be trees that have deep roots and not. But we should already be talking about a plan B. How are they going to define that? What the city, meet us halfway and say, you know what, we're going to participate. There is money. There's money in different areas for sewer and water that we need to look into. Where is it?
So I want to say that the TIRZ is just one public tool, one mechanism that we have, but we need that political will from all of council and the city to want to meet us halfway, like you're saying. And I know that this past year, the current council, they had their strategic planning sessions, and their second priority was downtown revitalization. So I think right now is the moment to try to galvanize and say, well, what are we doing about it? So I think that the interest is there, but we need to continue pushing as a community and say this is important, because like Henry mentioned, other districts say, well, I need money, I need infrastructure. Everybody wants to kind of take care of their district, but we need to show that downtown is for everyone, right?
But been there, done that. But tools that we have, and I'm glad that the tools we're using them right. But the tools that the other side is, you know what, they're not using that for downtown. And that's why I understand when you look at the political part of it, but you know what, just the common sense, and without a downtown, you're gonna struggle. So I just think that we need to be more aggressive. I know I had a meeting with last week about it. We need to get some stuff going downtown. this is our fair share. We're not asking for more, we're not asking, but we're not even getting our fair share. The only reason we're getting this, because everybody here is putting money in there to make this happen. Where's the city part?
Yeah.
Based on what he's saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on what he's saying, he made a good point, the tipping point. It's the beginning. It has to start somewhere. For the past 100 years, the city has taken taxes from the property valuations from downtown. Look at what the property values are these days. Pennies on the dollar. So there's only so much tax that's going to be collected to fund this project. But you know, if the city has taken money from downtown, they should put money into downtown. I think that's only fair. And then let it revitalize, because the border's closed. Lord only knows when it'll open. Until it opens, it's a good initiative that you guys are doing. This will take years. After this, I think the facades need to get a facelift. You walk downtown, you have beautiful walkways, you can make it ADA compliant, you can put beautiful trees and lights, but if half the stores are closed or there are homeless people living in front of them, no one's gonna go downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the facade improvements.
Yeah, there are a lot of little problems that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
he mentioned the facade. You know, one of the things that we had different programs as far as facade improvements, where we had matching funds. And the thing is that you come out with all these different programs, nobody takes advantage of it. Nobody takes advantage of it. You know, we go ahead and match, you give us $5,000, you're gonna go ahead and put $5,000 in, we'll match you $5,000. No one took advantage of it. So you're looking at, you throw all these different ideas that are out there, and it takes us, the property owners, to say, you know what, okay, now we're gonna do something. And so, here, like your buildings that you have on Zaragoza, if we had this program, I'm sure you would take advantage of it, you know? But that was one of the things.
Real quick, and on that, we actually had that program with the Main Street with the president.
Right, exactly.
We got the city to participate. They paid half.
Right.
We paid the other half.
Right.
And I think we got
Two or three at the most, but it was out there and nobody took advantage.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
it because of ignorance? People didn't know about it?
No, you know what? May I speak? I know one of the biggest stumbling blocks to that facade improvement program was that the city required, in return for the match, to create a full-time position within a year in that location. And that was more, frankly, than the match was worth. The salary for a full-time position, new position in that place within 1 year would have been more than the facade bench was worth. And so that, I know that tied a lot of people's hands.
Yeah,
If it hadn't been for that, I think that program would have been more successful.
Yeah, I've heard the same, and I think that there are lessons learned that we can look at. But I want to hear from Mr. Ceballos before we go
I think
into
I think Eagle's hitting it on the head in terms of some of the things that the city should be doing. And I think if we think strategically, and I think this is a good takeoff, if we can get very precise as property owners, as downtown developers, as builders, about what we would want the city to do for us as an incentive. I know, and I completely agree, Carol makes this point a lot during our meetings. The gentleman said it here, the operational aspect of it, that needs to be careful. Otherwise, you're right, our trees will look like they do today, which the last time they were cut by our team over a project we were working on, and they have not been maintained, so I agree with that. But if we could think off of this meeting, phase 2, phase 3, and then specifically, what do you need as a business owner to activate your property if it's currently dormant, if it's currently not leased? What is it? Is it a new water tap, a new sewer tap, a facade program, hardscape, landscape? What is it that you would want so that
More customers.
and that's a good point. Rooftops. We're not going to have a store down here until we have people living down here. That's just a fact. So getting real specific and maybe bottom lining it to 5 things that are key, and meeting with city management and saying these are the 5 things that our group thinks are extremely important now that the TIRZ is taken off with some projects. And maybe a room full of people, maybe more, agreeing that, yeah, generally, those are the 5 things we want. We want someone to maintain downtown. We need this other aspect. We need, for a housing developer, who has to pay a sewer tap, a fire line tap, a water tap, you're talking $100,000 downtown between all of those. And then you're not dealing with AP yet, and some of you've already dealt with that. So if we can somehow, through today's sessions, because there's one later today, come up with 5 things that we can take back to city management to help the council member and say, these are the 5 things that the group thinks as a phase 2, 3, and 4 we need. Because the TIRZ, we can go back to the TIRZ and say, phase 2, let's do facade improvements. All the money's gonna go to facade, but it's still, that's not the city, and I'm glad they made the point. Several of you have said it. The TIRZ board cannot do everything. Yes, it's part of the city, but let's work on maybe 5 things max that would be a true incentive to activate your property.
So, I would ask everyone to just think about those questions, but I want to invite you to grab lunch first, so we can have some.
Yeah, we promised a working lunch. So
Yes.
please, let's grab lunch and
Please
then
grab
continue the
lunch.
conversation.
I'll ask you if you can please wait.
Do all that stuff.
Yeah, we tried to do that.
Only one conversation.
Yes, please, only one conversation.
Use this own rule on it.
We do have someone with their hand up, so if we can please hear you, sir.
Perfect. I think Jose Ceballos hit the nail right on the head when he said we need to go to the city with 4 or 5 key initiatives. I mean, because there's a lot of things out there, that can be done, and it's important, as an organization to try to, take all those ideas, and there's a lot of great ones, and then just rank them, stack rank them, and say, okay, which 4 or 5 do we need to go to the city with help on? And I don't know if any of y'all watch HGTV, but when the weekend I've got a little bit of free time, I love watching these folks that fix up neighborhoods and houses and downtown developments, and I especially love Ben and Aaron for the wonderful work they do. A lot of what has to be done here downtown, believe it or not, has to be done by the property owners. Period. I mean, it's the responsibility of all of us that either own properties or work for, key businesses that have key properties down here, to take responsibility for what we have here in downtown, and it's a gem. Okay, but it's also incumbent upon us to go to our city officials and say, hey, why have you all not signed on Texas PACE? Does everybody here know what Texas PACE is? Property Assessed Clean Energy, Authority in the state of Texas. Most major cities, all of our competitors are signed on to that deal. And it's a financial tool for property owners to go get a loan easily from a bank, because the bank takes priority lien over everybody, even the taxing authorities, to lend these folks money. They'll only lend it once they do an assessment of people's properties and show them that how they're gonna, clean up the environment, make their buildings energy clean and everything efficient, and pays for itself from the energy savings.
Jimmy, I think that was actually presented to us at the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and I'm going to check, but I think the city, believe it or not, is actually working on that.
They haven't signed on. I just checked the website.
I mean, no, they haven't signed on to it. It's just been presented. They just started working on it.
This was presented to the city over a year ago, because it was long before COVID ever hit. I tried to talk to folks there. We need our city and our county both to sign on to that deal, so that property owners can go get the best financing opportunities available to them. Because it doesn't get signed off as a project unless they can show that the energy savings and all the savings on utilities, on this, on that, are gonna more than make up for the payment.
If you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it true that if it's a blighted building and you're buying new ACs, that would qualify?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's how it was pitched us, is that it can be a redevelopment tool.
It's worked in a lot of the major cities, and it's a tool for those folks that need to take ownership interest in how to get it done. So we don't have all the tools available to us, and so that's an area where we can go to the city and say, hey, we really need your help. Sign on to this program so that you can make it easier for banks to lend the property owners the money, because that means it's a win-win-win. It's a win for our environment, it's a win for the property owner, and it's a win for our downtown and the city as a whole. The other thing is, for whatever it's worth, and God rest his soul, Robert Bittman, we almost got a convention center here downtown. Didn't quite happen. You know, but you go back and look at all the major, you know, cities that you all had posted up on these videos, they all have a great convention center business in their walkable spaces. You look at San Antonio, and San Antonio has done a phenomenal job, but everything has grown exponentially after they built the H.B. Gonzalez Convention Center in downtown San Antonio. Because in the old days, you went to San Antonio and you walked the Riverwalk and you went to the bars and you did that stuff, but there really wasn't much walkability outside of the Riverwalk. Now you go to the San Antonio downtown and it is just awesome. Because so many people live there, they have a lot of these fresh markets. I mean, it's an awesome place to be. And that's what I see, the great work that Viviana and all the folks here are doing to kind of come up with this concept. But we have to take a greater ownership responsibility in this and say, okay, how do we marshal the resources that are available out there? Whether it's federal, state, local, and then get our local officials to say, hey, just help us sign on to this Texas PACE deal so that we can go get great financing, and banks are going to love it. So
I like how you're answering Jose Ceballos' question, which is a very concrete, you know, this is a request that I have to the city that will help my current investments. And I'd like to open that up to all of you guys. What's one thing that you think can help you expand your current investments? What's something that you think city government can do to help you with your current investments, to help you move that forward?
Sidewalks,
Sidewalks?
painting the facades. But, you know, they're coming down and saying, you know, paint it a certain colors so it all looks the same. Fixing the awnings. Having stores not paint the walls outside, looks terrible. Advertising on the walls.
Advertising on the wall?
Feels a little bit down.
What about a mural?
Murals would be nice, but I'm talking every individual store has their, you know, clearance sale, this, that, you know, going on, you know, whatever. It just kills the image of downtown. It's just like,
Yes, on that note, I think that, as I said, Laura? The idea of 5 collective and Mr. Knotson over there, 5 collective ideas that we need collectively downtown. What I see missing, and I've been working down here for 8+ years, trying to make a difference, to make it more walkable, which the ideas, these posters are amazing, I think. But what's missing, and part of why we can't move forward, because we do have the backing of a lot of the city leaders. It's a priority, like you said. It's a priority. The revitalization of downtown is a priority for the city of Laredo, for the politicians, for the elected officials, for the top level department heads. They want to revitalize downtown because we have we've got all the bones of downtown that other people are creating, right? We are the gateway to Mexico. We are the entrance to the United States of America. We do have a very historic cathedral. We have old buildings. We have history. We have all of that. We have a grid system that is the most walkable. We have all that. What we don't have is participation from a group of people that we could, if I need someone to go with me to speak to a counselor, or if I need someone to show up at a meeting, what I don't have, except for Mr. Jackson over there, is people on my speed dial, right, to get them here. I called Patricia, my prima, yesterday, and she came from Monterrey to show up. She just arrived, she drove this morning to come to this meeting because she wants to make a difference. But what we need, what we lack, like Jimmy said, is the eagerness, the participation of the actual property owners. We're the actual property owners. It was hard to get people to this meeting because we don't have that collective list. Who's in charge of that? Nobody that I know of, because I've been looking for it for 8 years. Who's in charge of promoting downtown? Who's in charge of making sure that the buildings are painted the right way? Who's in charge? When do we meet? Where do they meet? Who do I talk to? Nobody knows. I hear drainage issues, I see things, streets being dug up and then replaced with who knows what. Who's making those decisions? Not the stakeholders, not the stakeholders. And the stakeholders may never make those decisions, right? But at least they could be at the table, right? Invited to the table to help make those decisions. So that when the signage goes up, I know that the department got money to do the wayfaring, right? But who do you want doing the wayfaring? Someone that actually has a store, that has input from buyers and customers, or someone that works for the city that sits in an office and doesn't have one retail customer ever, right? Who's better equipped to make a better decision? Well, then, I mean, I don't have the answer, but I know what I think, right? Especially with some of the improvements that went down Zaragoza Street. So if we want better improvements, it would behoove us, I think, to be at the table, at least to be at the table. And I think that's on the list of the 5 things that you need. Try and encourage someone that you know that has an interest in downtown to participate. Thank you all for being here, right? Because I think you're all leaders in this movement because you're sitting at the table.
Would a merchant association help?
Maybe. Let's talk about that.
I think anything and everything can help, to be quite frank with you. The thing is that, you know, the people that are passionate downtown, I'm one. I mean, it's you know, we go to other cities, and I've mentioned it to other people. We went to El Paso just to walk the streets out there. And the first person I called when I got back was to listen. And I said, just unbelievable. You know, it's just unbelievable. It's a fight. You know, you walk down the street and you have merchandise outside the stores, and there's people walking here and walking there. And the bridges are closed, by the way. You know, the bridges are closed. Still, you have people downtown. And we're seeing people from the north finally coming to our downtown area. They're going to the outlet mall, and they're shopping here. But there's, as far as the investments, as far as the obstacles that we have in front of us, that's the difficult part. It's the difficult part where you're saying, you know, people need to participate. Yes, we need to participate. At one point in time, I think if there was an office, if we had some type of an office, you know, maybe just within the city, where you know what, I want to develop a home in the downtown area, and they'll give you everything you have to do. You get someone to help these people to do them. I think it would be a lot easier, just making it easier for the people. But our problems that we have in the downtown area, as far as development, as far as residential, I mean, a lot of the properties that we own were pegged for residential, and the obstacles that we see, you know, just utilities, the utilities for the area in our downtown area. I'm thinking about all the, you know, developing and seeing all these beautiful trees and everything, and then at the end of the day, say, oh, you know what, we're gonna have to tear all this up. I mean, they tore up my street on Grant maybe, 3 times, 4 times before they thought they fixed it. The city thought they fixed it. And one of our problems that we have is just the utilities in itself, capacities. You know, so all this has to be taken into consideration as far as residential development. And I think Laredo is perfect for it right now. I mean, Zaragoza Street, I don't know if you, you know, close to your property that you own, my God, we thought it was the restaurants at the mall. It's not. It's the sewer, and a lot of our sewers are tapped in illegally. And so you want to redevelop Zaragoza Street. So we redevelop Zaragoza Street, and at the end of the day, you know, we have a problem here. And this is something that I'd like to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. As far as what we would like to do in the downtown area.
Yeah, and I think it's urgent.
And you know, we here the mall in itself, it took us what, 12 years to develop that thing. you know, in the working. And it could have gone anywhere else. I mean, we could have moved it up north. These are the same developers that developed San Marcos. They sold to Tanger Outlets. And it's the same guys, same group. But we have an asset now. We have all of this river that's here. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's really, really nice. And I think that we all should capitalize on it. We have something with the influx of everybody coming in from California and New York, and it's just buying up a swarm throughout that Austin, San Antonio. You wait your turn, sir. I waited for you. So with all these people coming in, I think they're all going to be trickling down here. They're all going to be trickling down here, and we need to be prepared for them. Go ahead, sir.
You're not the moderator here. So okay. I'm going to make just my final comments because I think everything I think everybody here understands and has a common goal. What can we do to leverage the resources, all the resources necessary to help make Laredo downtown, restore it to just even a former glimmer of itself, you know, when it started off in the historic times, and even better, we have to reimagine the downtown because business the way it always happened in Laredo is not going to happen the same way anymore. Technology has changed that forever. And easier credit, you know, to our friends down in Manhattan. A lot of things have changed that. But my suggestion is even before we go to the city with that list of 4 or 5, I would suggest that somebody, you know, if they know him, if not, I'll find somebody that does know him, reach out to a guy like Kevin Covey that's been very successful developing, you know, downtown San Antonio. He's from Monterey. His family's from Monterey. You know, I mean, what better thing than to have somebody that's been very successful in redeveloping, reimagining what downtown could look like, and then have him come down here and say, what would you like to see, you know, done here? What would make you want to commit your several hundreds of millions of dollars of development to Laredo, Texas, instead of, you know, continue to focus on San Antonio type of deal. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to some of the things that have been done 30 years ago or 25, whatever it was. Viviana and their architectural firm had this great competition, you know, I mean, to this day I'll never forget it. How would they reimagine our ports and redesign them? And it was just the most wonderful thing to see all these architectural students submit their projects from across the world, you know, here to Laredo, Texas. And they've already got some great designs, a lot of which I think would still be applicable today. So, you know, hopefully you all have that stuff somewhere in your bodegas. I mean, but I'm putting you on the spot. I mean, but a lot of people have done a lot of work. And it's a shame because these are ideas that should have been implemented 20 years ago. I mean, they've been there for the taking. And we just have not taken the responsibility as business owners and property owners and others to make this happen. And so I think we need to all look in the mirror and say, what can I do better to make this happen? And so I think Jose's idea is the best. Let's go to the city with 4 or 5 deals. Before we do that, you know, let's stank rank them. Then let's invite somebody that's been very successful at reimagining a downtown, you know, away from us and ask their opinion. I think that's I love to look to people that have had great successes and say, what did you see in San Antonio? Because it was really a cesspool before you really got there. And I think that would be great.
Thank you.
So.
Do you want to hear from anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Tim, anything to add when ready for that?
I do, but I don't know if I should say it.
If we'll say it, we'll let you know.
Stays here. Yeah. I think, you know, of course, a great base of the problems we've discussed is our city leadership and the people that we keep electing to office here. And so I think we need to be very careful about who we elect in the future. Because it's you know, we're fighting with one hand tied behind our backs all the time. There's so much lack of vision from one administration to the next. We had a comprehensive master plan that took so much energy and so much time and so much participation. It was fantastic, and I would like to implemented. But I hear that as it goes along, individual council people start saying, well, we don't really need that and we don't really need that, and they're making these individual changes at that level, which does not help the rest of the city, doesn't help the actual plan. The plan was created for a reason. And I think the downtown needs that. The downtown needs a plan that is implemented because, yes, the utility issue has always been with us. You see the street out in front of you dug up for the 20th time. They take 3 months to do whatever it is they're doing. They put it all back and it looks at least drivable again. And a year later, they're doing it again. And you know, I'm not seeing any big improvement in my internet access or whatever it is they were doing. I don't know if it was telephone or sewer or whatever it was. It's just very random and haphazard. So I think these issues really need buy-in politically and buy-in both from the administrators and from the electorate, from the people who vote people in. We all need to be very, very careful about it. Who we're voting in and try to get candidates that have a bigger vision for the town.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that maybe those 4 or 5 things are already in the comprehensive plan, and so maybe we need to go back and look at those chapters and see, what still works for us today.
One last thing, and I understand thanks to your point of representing the city with the units, the city budget money is constructed and.
I don't think anybody can hear you.
Yeah, we can speak louder.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from. Us representing the city, we just constructed a 20 company units at a corner from City Hall. For elderly, they're all rented out to 15 elderly people. The issue we encountered, I understand the utility issue, we tried to change, to a bigger size, all the drainage. And we're having issues with the water heaters, the restrooms and stuff, because it's not prepped for residential or rental, since it's just business. So we ourselves are having trouble doing that. We try when we do that portion, that corner, upgrading the drainage, but we still have issues. Also with the utilities, we wanted to upgrade all the utilities underground. They wanted to charge us just the corner of the Hamilton, which is Houston and
Salinas Street.
Salinas, just that corner, $16,000 just to do it, because we wanted to remove one light bulb, so.
Remove light bulb?
No, yes, so, so it was very, very difficult for us as well, to work with the bigger spectrum, just to get one, phone line for the elevator, like $8,000, so there's also issues that we as the city encounter, and we just didn't have the money to pay $70-some thousand to do underground utility system, but we're having issues as well with the drainage.
May I humbly request why these bids weren't sent out to maybe out of town, San Antonio, Houston? There are independent contractors out there. They may charge a trip charge, but they'll do a better job.
Yeah, no,
And they'll be out.
for the utilities, we go through our building department as well. We also encounter issues getting our own permits as a city. It takes months, so I know how y'all feel as private investors and having new businesses, but we need to encounter this issue. So we try, but again, like you mentioned, it's not.
You just said your city's having problems getting permits from itself. Good.
Julian?
I'd just like to add to the design of all this. The recent trip I went on, I'm looking at this, and it's really starting to spark a lot of memories. When I was in Barcelona recently, there are streets everywhere. It's a very dense city, very small blocks, and it's an amazing grid. And remembering back on my trip, we never planned on how we were going to get to locations. We just walked through streets, and there's this major psychological, part of me that remembers choosing streets based on lighting and what looked interesting and trees. I think this really can go a long way So like for me, I'm not sure if Vito's here anymore, but it's talking about phase 2. I think lighting, trees, and signage are a great first thing that needs to get started immediately, because it really does define, at least for me and the group of people I was with, the paths we were taking. So I think it may sound a little crazy, but those 3 things are really a great jumpstart that needs to get started sooner than later. And just look forward to seeing when we have a meeting on phase 2 at this point, because I think we're really far behind. That doesn't mean we can't, hit the ground running at this point. So those are just my comments. Like those 3 things are probably the most important, just so we can start.
I do agree with you. That would give aesthetics-wise, bring it some a nice feel. But at the same time, whoever does the work, maybe we can bind them to do maintenance on it. Otherwise, 3 years, 4 years down the road, we're gonna have the same.
We're gonna have to.
Which is a conversation.
Everyone knows the Iturbide Mr.'s story, and we don't want that to happen again. So I think we need to come together again. Once this starts, when a shovel goes in the ground, we should already be planning the maintenance a year down the road.
Julian, one of the things that I mentioned, especially outside of Laredo, his name is Julian. But
since you went to Barcelona.
But anyway, the problem here that I've mentioned again, and I hate to keep on mentioning it again over and over, but like Zaragoza Street, we have a problem on Salinas and Zaragoza. And the stench is just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So all I'm saying is that we have all these beautiful trees and we have gorgeous sidewalks, finally ADA. We're gonna tear them. We're gonna say, utilities. So I'm bringing it up today on the record. And I would just hate to be developing this and then just coming back to fix the utility.
And as you asked our friend, for the record, what is your name?
Jay Malik.
So we have less than 10 minutes left. So I do want to hear, just in case, Mr. Alexander, man, you came all this way. Is there something you'd like to tell us? Mary, Jessica, I'd like to hear from everyone.
I want to hear first from the first I can't wait to remember.
Okay, yes, we can walk you through afterwards. Yes, no problem. Anything you guys would add?
Just like, I think for us, it would be also just the incentives, if anything, to bring housing to downtown as an agency, right? We would need to look at what incentives and, of course, the utility issues like I just mentioned. That would be something that we would want to discuss with the city.
Yeah. You guys have anything? All right.
I have a question. So we've had a lot of comments here and a lot of desire for things to happen. So how do we put together, because all of this requires tasks and movement forward, it's implementation of tasks. How do you imagine that to be the best way of going forward in terms of a group?
I think that if we have something, the people, then you have X amount, and you're gonna show the people what it is today. And when you say tax.
T-A-S-K. Assign the work.
Sorry.
Work. People have to do the job.
People have to do the job of moving all
Right.
these things forward. Who do you?
I think
how
Larry
do
raised
we-
his hand earlier.
How do we organize that? What do we do? What do we do to move this
I
forward?
think it's very, very important that we have to move forward on this sooner than later. As far as what this organization has done as far as BD and Juliana has done. I think it's great. Everybody that's on this team, and I think that if we wait, that's just it. If we wait, procrastination, we're always waiting for mañana, and we get on board. We have the people, we have the properties that basically that we're looking at up and down Zaragoza. You have all the people that are for this. I mean, so now our next step, where do we go from here? You know, and how do we implement this?
Well, how do we keep the momentum going? You just said on the record, this is what needs to happen. So
Right.
that means there's something that needs to happen to
It
make
needs to
sure that people are hearing
Exactly.
that this is and move them forward. So there's a need for that. So that's something that we have to come up with as what vehicle, who is going to carry the water for all these ideas.
Mr. Johnson.
I think, Viviana, you hit the nail right on the head. Because without having the tasks assigned, nothing gets done, and they're just great ideas floating around like they have been for the last 20 years, like that beautiful deal that you all did in designing the entryway and the exitway to the gateway of the Americas. But my suggestion would be the board make committees that are specific to what we talked about here. Somebody's going to go back and look at the master plan and how does that tie into the 4 or 5 main ideas that Jose Ceballos said we need to go to the city with, and say, do they mesh or do they don't mesh? Have a committee, at the board level, just say, hey, who wants to sit on this committee? You're going to meet weekly until we get it hammered out. That says, okay, let's come up with the 5 major issues, and so on and so forth. Because you're right, if nobody has a task assigned, it ain't gonna get done. The board can't do it by itself. It's gonna need broader participation from all the property owners. Clearly there's, people that are interested that don't sit on the board that, would raise their hand to sit on the committee and start doing some of that work. And hopefully, the next session you have more, and then you shoot out the messages to all those, that would be impacted. But at the end of the day, I want to get back to what I said earlier. It's all about the money. So I know at some point, and Jose, you and I had talked about it several years back, what areas Laredo got designated those special, zones where if you develop in there, you didn't have to pay taxes for
5, 10.
There's one.
Is there one in downtown?
Neighborhood apartments.
No, it wasn't there. It was.
The NEZ neighborhood.
No, we didn't get any.
Laredo didn't get any? Shame on us.
Area. There's one in the south.
There's one in the south, but we didn't get one downtown. That's a shame. The other thing though is that we really need to find these opportunities, because I'm going to go back to my days, at St. Mary's University, because I remember San Antonio clearly, and if you would have had a flat tire where the Pearl was, when I was going to college there, you may not get out with your life.
Right.
Now you can't touch a condo there for $750,000. And they had federal funding, and incentives to get that development done, and they didn't even meet their requirement of having affordable housing for the people in that area. That's crazy. But it's a beautiful place for those people that now go to the Pearl, and it just ties into the whole downtown deal, but it takes money. And that money comes in when they know that they're gonna, have a better chance of making their rate of return when they have these federal and state incentives to make that huge investment. So we've got to find developers that are willing to commit the money to help us start developing downtown. And I promise you, the politicians will come in. Politicians follow the money. Let's not. It is what it is. And until they see the money, they ain't gonna be worried about downtown. So we need to find the money to start reimagining, redeveloping downtown. Find these programs to help them put their capital in, know that they're not going to have to pay taxes for whatever period of time, have whatever incentives are done there, go to the city, hey, we need this incentive because somebody's going to build a high-rise here, whatever the case may be. Right. We had an opportunity with it, probably wasn't the right time anyway, so we didn't have the right ingress and egress for a convention center right here anyway. But we need to reimagine it, start with one development, and everything else follows. We can start, phase 1, start doing that stuff, but that's why I say let's invite Kevin Covey to come down here. Give us some ideas. Maybe he'll get interested and say, hey, you know what, I got $50 million lying around. I think I got a project for Lloyd.
But Jimmy, you know, as
we
far as
have-
that incentive, you know, we came in with an outlet mall. Yeah, well, we're $100 million invested there. There's your idea. So we thought everything would just fall into place. Zaragoza Street, that was the first street that we said, okay, let's have it redeveloped. We had to paint the buildings there because the owners wouldn't paint them. Mr. Malik wouldn't paint his building. He said no.
Mr.
Well-
Malik, I think you had a comment. We have hit time, so I encourage you to stay. Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay, Henry?
I want to be conscientious of your time, and I like the idea, you asked who would we task with this, and that's a very good question. So for the time being, Jimmy, we'll take on the task in terms of the TIRZ, and we'll distill, because there's another meeting like this in the afternoon, and we do need to narrow it down to the top 4 or 5. Because, you know, if you go to the city with your top 20, you know, then nothing. But we have your names. We're going to distill it. We'll form a committee to work on that and look at this. And then we'll bring it to the city, and we'll bring you back to continue discussing this, because like it or not, we now have your name and number.
Did everybody sign in?
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. It's helping us. Just FYI, you are right. We've done studies, the Viva Laredo, downtown development plan, and all of this informed this project. We read those studies and we studied those studies before moving forward with this. And talking about distilling to the top 5 things, how do you think we got, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but how do you think we got to streets, sidewalks, and lights? And you keep on hearing me say that over and over and over again. When we started this project a year or 2 ago, it was streets, sidewalks, lights, drainage, underground wiring, facade improvement, and it was a list of 25 things. But the money was this size. So we studied and we studied and we distilled it to the 5 you're talking about, we distilled it to 3. And so everything we're doing in terms of improvement, because it shows the greatest measure, bang for your buck, is a sidewalk, a light, and a tree. And that's why you hear us saying this over and over and over. Thank you very much.
Sir,
Thank you all.
just one last thing, I'm sorry. When regards to what you said, I like the approach. TIRZ can approach the city, but since you guys are already working with the city, your hands may be tied.
That's why we need your help.
Right, so I think there should be a parallel organization or a group of people that we are looking at our own interests because we are the property owners. You guys can look at it on the holistic view, and we tackle them.
We're not going to say no to that.
Yeah, I think we need multiple angles.
Right.
You know, it's not gonna be
Because city doesn't
one
want
entity.
quality, they want quantity. Let's give them quantity.
So.
We
I
want
agree.
But so your idea is like a business district?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, sort of. Merchant association.
So once again, thank you for coming. As a reminder, the TIRZ is a public tool, and they are part of the public process. All the meetings are recorded. They take place once a month, and you're invited to comment. You're invited to attend the meetings. So I do want to let you know that the next TIRZ meeting is Tuesday, September 14th at 2:30 p.m. Where do they take place, Henrik?
So they usually take place at the community, what's it called, the community center, the development?
It's the transit center.
Okay.
So you know Jarvis Plaza, the city building above the bus station? It's a conference room on the third floor.
Okay, and then after that, if you can't make the 2:30 time, the next meeting following that will be Tuesday, October 12th at 5:30 p.m. So, you know, we can only do this if we remain engaged, and like you said, maybe it takes other groups, you know, outside of the city, but your future, our future is all connected, and so we need to continue to push things forward and remain connected as you guys as stakeholders, landowners. So thank you again for taking the time to come today. Feel free to grab more refreshments, stay a little while afterwards. But thanks to the board and Able City.
Will we come back at 5 for dinner?